sounded so close, the ground shook, the walls swayed, and dust filled the air. Another explosion, even closer, shook the building again. The man cursed, spun, and ran from the room, slamming the door shut behind him. Her strength sapped, she slumped against the wall, willing the explosions to hit dead on where she stood to put her out of her misery. She didn't think she would live through another beating, which was sure to come, because she didn't have the answers the man wanted. No matter how hard she tried to think, she couldn't remember anything beyond waking up in her tiny cell, lying face down in the dirt. Another explosion split the air. The wall beside her erupted, caving into the room. She was thrown forward, rubble falling on and around her. Dusty light spilled into the room through a huge hole in the wall. Pushing the stones, sticks, and dirt away from her body, she scrambled to her feet and edged toward the gap. The explosion had destroyed the back of the building in which she'd been incarcerated. No one moved behind it. Climbing over the rubble, she stuck her head through the hole and looked right and left at a narrow alley down below. At the end of the alley was a dirt street. Men covered in dust and carrying weapons ran along the street yelling. Some carried others who had been injured in the explosions. The sound of gunfire echoed through the alley, and the men threw themselves to the ground. She ducked back inside the hole, afraid she'd be hit by the bullets, but then she realized she'd rather be shot than take another beating. Instead of waiting around for her attacker to return, she pulled herself through the gap and dropped to the ground. A shout sounded on the street at the other end of the alley. She didn't wait to find out if the man was shouting at her. She turned the opposite direction and ran. At the other end of the alley, a canvas-covered truck stood, the back overflowing with some kind of cut vegetation, dried leaves, and stalks. With men shouting and brandishing weapons all around her, she wouldn't last long out in the open. She dove into the back of the truck and buried herself beneath the stems and leaves. A metal door opened and slammed shut. The truck's engine roared to life, and the vehicle rolled along the street. With no way to see where they were headed, she resigned herself to going along for the ride. Anywhere had to be better than where she'd been. As she lay beneath the sticks and leaves, she realized they were drying stalks of marijuana, a lucrative crop for Syrian farmers. Where they were taking their crop, she didn't know. Hopefully far enough away from the people who'd held her hostage. She touched her wrist where the skin had been rubbed raw, probably from having been tied with abrasive rope. In the meager light penetrating her hiding place, she noticed a tattoo on the underside of her wrist below the raw skin. She pushed the leaves aside to allow more light to shine in on what she recognized as a three-sided trinity knot. Below the knot were a series of lines and shapes. The more she tried to decipher the symbols, the more her head ached and her eyes blurred. The tattoo wouldn't rub off. Since it was permanent, she should know what the knot and the symbols stood for. No matter how hard she tried to remember, she couldn't. The rumble of the engine and the rocking motion of the truck lulled her into a fitful sleep, broken up by sudden jolts when the truck encountered a particularly deep pothole. What felt like hours later, the vehicle rolled into what appeared to be the edge of a town. If she planned on leaving the truck, she needed to do it before they stopped and found her hiding in the marijuana. She dug her way out of the sticks and leaves, crawled to the tailgate, and peered out between slitted, swollen eyelids. The truck had slowed at an intersection in a dirty, dingy area of the town. With a dark alley to either side, this might be her only chance to get out unnoticed. As the truck lurched forward, she rolled over the tailgate, dropped to the ground, and ducked into a shadowy alley. With her face bruised and bleeding, she wouldn't get far without attracting attention. But she had to get away from the truck and figure out where to go from there. Turning left at the end of a stucco tenement building, she crossed a street and ducked back into a residential area. Between apartment buildings, lines were hung with various items of clothing, including a black abaya cloak. Glancing left, then right, she slowed, then walked up to the clothesline, pulled off the black abaya, and walked away as if she owned it. A shout behind her made her take off running. She turned at the end of the building and shot a glance over her shoulder. An older woman stood beneath the space where the abaya had been. She wore another abaya and shook her fist. "Sorry," she murmured, but she had to do so.